With thousands of years of recorded history, and due to an unchanging geographic condition, Iran has had a long, varied, and checkered military culture and history, ranging from triumphant and unchallenged ancient military supremacy affording effective superpower status in its day, to a series of near-catastrophic defeats at the hand of previously subdued and conquered peripheral nations. Elam, Medes, Achaemenid era. The Achaemenid Empire was the first of the Persian empires to rule over significant portions of Greater Iran. The empire possessed a national army of roughly 120,000–150,000 troops, plus several tens of thousands of troops from their allies. The Persian army was divided into regiments of 1,000 each, called Hazarabim. 10 Hazarabams formed a High Varabam, or division. The best-known High Varabam were the Immortals, the king's personal guard division. The smallest unit was the 10-man Dathaba. 10 Dathabas formed the 100-man Satabar. The royal army used a system of color uniforms to identify different units. A large variety of colors were used, some of the most common being yellow, purple, and blue. But this system was probably limited to native Persian troops and was not used for their numerous allies. The usual tactic employed by the Persians in the early period of the empire was to form a shield wall that archers could fire over. These troops were equipped with a large rectangular wicker shield called a spara, and armed with a short spear, measuring around 6 feet long. The bow was the most widely used weapon of the Persians. The role of the spara was to soften the enemy with volleys of arrows. The main shock action was done by the cavalry. The heavily equipped Persian foot soldiers were not ideal for shock attacks. Seleucid Empire. The Seleucid Empire was a Hellenistic successor state of Alexander the Great's dominion, including central Anatolia, the Levant, Mesopotamia, Persia, Turkmenistan, Pamir and the Indus Valley. Parthian Empire. Parthia was an Iranian civilization situated in the northeastern part of modern Iran, but at the height of its power, the Parthian dynasty covered all of Iran proper, as well as Armenia, Azerbaijan, Iraq, Georgia, eastern Turkey, eastern Syria, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Pakistan, Kuwait, the Persian Gulf, the coast of Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine and the UAE. The Parthian Empire was led by the Arsacid dynasty, led by the Pani, a confederation of Scythians which reunited and ruled over the Iranian plateau. After defeating and disposing the Hellenistic Seleucid Empire, beginning in the late 3rd century BC, and intermittently controlled Mesopotamia between 150 BC and 224 AD, it was the third native dynasty of ancient Iran. Parthia was the archenemy of the Roman Empire for nearly 3 centuries. After the Scythian Pani nomads had settled in Parthia and built a small independent kingdom, they rose to power under King Mithridates the Great. Later, at the height of their power, Parthian influence reached as far as Uba in Arabia, the nexus of the frankincense trade route, where Parthian-inspired ceramics have been found. The power of the early Parthian Empire seems to have been overestimated by some ancient historians, who could not clearly separate the powerful later empire from its more humble, obscure origins. The end of this long-lived empire came in 224 AD, when the empire was loosely organized and the last king was defeated by one of the empire's vassals, the Persians of the Sassanid dynasty. Sassanid era. The birth of the Sassanid army dates back to the rise of Ardashir I, the founder of the Sassanid dynasty, to the throne. Ardashir aimed at the revival of the Persian Empire, and to further this aim, he reformed the military by forming a standing army which was under his personal command and whose officers were separate from satraps, local princes and nobility. He restored the Achaemenid military organizations, retained the Parthian cavalry model, and employed new types of armor and siege warfare techniques. This was the beginning for a military system which served him and his successors for over 400 years, during which the Sassanid Empire was, along with the Roman Empire and later the East Roman Empire, one of the two superpowers of late antiquity in Western Eurasia. The Sassanid army protected Iran Shah from the east against the incursions of Central Asiatic nomads like the Hephthalites, Turks, while in the west it was engaged in a recurrent struggle against its rival, the Roman Empire and later the Byzantine Empire, setting on forth the conflicts that had started since the time of their predecessors, the Parthians, and would end after around 720 years, making it the longest conflict in human history. Islamic Conquest. The Islamic conquest of Persia led to the end of the Sassanid Empire and the eventual decline of the Zoroastrian religion in Persia. However, the achievements of the previous Persian civilizations were not lost, but were to a great extent absorbed by the new Islamic polity. Most Muslim historians have long offered the idea that Persia, on the verge of the Arab invasion, was a society in decline and decay, and thus it embraced the invading Arab armies with open arms. This view is not widely accepted, however. Some authors have, for example, used mostly Arab sources to illustrate that, contrary to the claims, Iranians in fact fought long and hard against the invading Arabs. This view furthermore holds that once politically conquered, the Persians began engaging in a cultural war of resistance and succeeded in forcing their own ways on the victorious Arabs. Taheri Dynasty. The Taheri dynasty ruled the northeastern Persian Empire region of Khorasan. The Taherid capital was Nishapur. Although nominally subject to the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad, the Taherid rulers were effectively independent. The dynasty was founded by Tahir ibn Hussein, a leading general in the service of the Abbasid Caliph al-Ma'mun. Tahir's military victories were rewarded with the gift of lands in the east of Persia, which were subsequently extended by his successors as far as the borders of India. The Taheri dynasty is considered to be the first independent dynasty from the Abbasid Caliphate established in Khorasan. They were overthrown by the Safari Dynasty, who annexed Khorasan to their own empire in eastern Persia. Alavid Dynasty. The Alavids or Alavians were a Shia emirate based in Mazandaran of Iran. They were descendants of the second Shia Imam and brought Islam to the South Caspian Sea region of Iran. Their reign was ended when they were defeated by the Samanid Empire in 928 AD. After their defeat, some of the soldiers and generals of the Alavids joined the Samanid dynasty. Mardavij, the son of Ziyar, was one of the generals that joined the Samanids. He later founded the Ziyarid dynasty. Ali, Hassan and Ahmad, the sons of Bai-Buja, were also among generals of the Alavid dynasty who joined the Samanid army. Safari dynasty. The Safarid dynasty ruled a short-lived empire in Sistan, which is a historical region now in southeastern Iran and southwestern Afghanistan. Their rule was between 861 to 1003. The Safarid capital was Zaranj. The dynasty was founded by, and took its name from, Yaqub bin Layth as-Safar, a man of humble origins who rose from an obscure beginning as a coppersmith to become a warlord. He seized control of the Sistan region, conquering all of Afghanistan, modern-day eastern Iran, and parts of Pakistan, using the capital as base for an aggressive expansion eastwards and westwards. They overthrew the Taheri dynasty and annexed Khorasan in 873. By the time of Yaqub's death, he had conquered Kabul Valley, Sindh, Tokristan, Makran, Kerman, Fars, Khorasan, and nearly reaching Baghdad, but then suffered defeat. The Safarid Empire did not last long after Yaqub's death. His brother and successor Amr bin Layth was defeated in a battle with the Samanids in 900. Amr bin Layth was forced to surrender most of their territories to the new rulers. The Safarids were subsequently confined to their heartland of Sistan, with their role reduced to that of vassals of the Samanids and their successors. Samanid dynasty. The Samanids were a Persian dynasty in Central Asia and Greater Khorasan, named after its founder Saman Qudar, who converted to Sunni Islam despite being from Zoroastrian theocratic nobility. It was among the first native Iranian dynasties in Greater Iran and Central Asia after the Arab conquest and the collapse of the Sassanid Persian Empire. Ziyarid dynasty. The Ziyarids, also spelled Ziyarids, were an Iranian dynasty that ruled in the Caspian provinces of Gorgan and Mazandaran from 930–1090. The founder of the dynasty was Mardavij, who took advantage of a rebellion in the Samanid army of Iran to seize power in northern Iran. He soon expanded his domains and captured the cities of Hamadan and Isfahan. Buwayhid dynasty. The Buyid dynasty were a Shia Persian dynasty that originated from Daylaman and Gilan. They founded a confederation that controlled most of modern-day Iran and Iraq in the 10th and 11th centuries. Ghaznavi Empire. The Ghaznavids were a Muslim dynasty of Turkic slave origin which existed from 975 to 1187 and ruled much of Persia, Transoxania, and the northern parts of the Indian subcontinent. The dynasty was founded by Sebuktigin upon his succession to rule of territories centered around the city of Ghazni from his father-in-law, Alptigin, a breakaway ex-general of the Samanid sultans. Sebuktigin's son, Shah Mahmud, expanded the empire in the region that stretched from the Oxus River to the Indus Valley and the Indian Ocean, and in the west it reached Rayan, Hamadan. Under the reign of Masud I it experienced major territorial losses. It lost its western territories to the Seljuks in the Battle of Dandana Khan, resulting in a restriction of its holdings to what is now Afghanistan, as well as Balochistan and the Punjab. In 1151, Sultan Bahram Shah lost Ghazni to Ala al-Din Hussein of Gur, and the capital was moved to Lahore until its subsequent capture by the Ghurids in 1186. Seljuk Empire. The Seljuks were a Turco-Persian Sunni Muslim dynasty that ruled parts of Central Asia and the Middle East from the 11th to 14th centuries. They set up an empire, the Great Seljuk Empire, which at its height stretched from Anatolia through Persia and which was the target of the First Crusade. The dynasty had its origins in the Turkoman tribal confederations of Central Asia and marks the beginning of Turkic power in the Middle East. After arriving in Persia, the Seljuks adopted the Persian culture and are regarded as the cultural ancestors of the Western Turks, the present-day inhabitants of Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Turkmenistan. Khwarezmian Empire. The Khwarezmian dynasty, also known as Khwarezmids or Khwarezm Shahs, was a Persianate Sunni Muslim dynasty of Turkic Mamluk origin. They ruled Greater Iran in the High Middle Ages, in the period of about 1077 to 1231, first as vassals of the Seljuks, Kara Khatan, and later as independent rulers, up until the Mongol invasions of the 13th century. The dynasty was founded by Anushtijan Garchai, a former slave of the Seljuk sultans, who was appointed the governor of Khwarezm. His son, Qutb Din Muhammad I, became the first hereditary Shah of Khwarezm. Ilkhanate. The Ilkhanate was a Mongol Khanate established in Persia in the 13th century, considered a part of the Mongol Empire. The Ilkhanate was based, originally, on Genghis Khan's campaigns in the Khwarezmid Empire in 1219–1224, and founded by Genghis's grandson, Hulagu. In what territories which today comprise most of Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey, and western Pakistan. The Ilkhanate initially embraced many religions, but was particularly sympathetic to Buddhism and Christianity, and sought a Franco-Mongol alliance with the Crusaders in order to conquer Palestine. Later Ilkhanate rulers, beginning with Ghazan in 1295, embraced Islam. Muzaffarid dynasty. Chupanid dynasty. Jalayirid dynasty. The Jalayirids were a Mongol descendant dynasty which ruled over Iraq and western Persia after the breakup of the Mongol Khanate of Persia in the 1330s. The Arid Sultanate lasted about 50 years, until disrupted by Tamerlane's conquest and the revolts of the Black Sheep Turks, or Karakoyunlu. After Tamerlane's death in 1405, there was a brief unsuccessful attempt to re-establish the Arid Sultanate, and Arid Sultanate was ended by Karakoyunlu in 1432. Murud Empire. The Timurids were a Central Asian Sunni Muslim dynasty of originally Turco-Mongol descent, whose empire included the whole of Central Asia, Iran, modern Afghanistan, as well as large parts of Pakistan, India, Mesopotamia, Anatolia and the Caucasus. It was founded by the militant conqueror Timur in the 14th century. In the 16th century, Timurid Prince Babur, the ruler of Fergana, invaded India and founded the Mughal Empire, which ruled most of the Indian subcontinent until its decline after Aurangzeb in the early 18th century, and was formally dissolved by the British Raj after the Indian Rebellion of 1857. Karakoyunlu Turkomans. Koyunlu Turkomans. Safavid era. The Safavid rulers of Persia, like the Mamluks of Egypt, viewed firearms with distaste, and at first made little attempt to adopt them into their armed forces. Like the Mamluks, they were taught the error of their ways by the powerful Ottoman armies. Unlike the Mamluks, they lived to apply the lessons they had learnt on the battlefield. In the course of the 16th century, but still more in the 17th, the Shahs of Iran took steps to acquire handguns and artillery pieces and to re-equip their forces with them. Initially, the principal sources of these weapons appears to have been Venice, Portugal, and England. Despite their initial reluctance, the Persians very rapidly acquired the art of making and using handguns. A Venetian envoy, Vincenzo di Alessandri, in a report presented to the Council of Ten on 24 September 1572, observes, "They used for arms, swords, lances, arquebuses, which all the soldiers carry and use. Their arms are also superior and better tempered than those of any other nation. The barrels of the arquebuses are generally 6 spans long, and carry a ball little less than 3 ounces in weight. They use them with such facility that it does not hinder them drawing their bows nor handling their swords, keeping the latter hung at their saddle bows till occasion requires them. The arquebus is then put away behind the back so that one weapon does not impede the use of the other." This picture of the Persian horseman, equipped for almost simultaneous use of the bow, sword, and firearm, aptly symbolized the dramatic and complexity of the scale of changes that the Persian military was undergoing. While the use of personal firearms was becoming commonplace, the use of field artillery was limited and remained on the whole ineffective. Shah Abbas was instrumental in bringing about a modern, gunpowder era in the Persian army. Following the Ottoman army model that had impressed him in combat, the Shah set about to build his new army. He was much helped by 2 English brothers, Anthony and Robert Shirley, who went to Iran in 1598 with 26 followers and remained in the Persian service for a number of years. The brothers helped organize the army into an officer-paid and well-trained standing army similar to a European model. It was organized along 3 divisions: Ghilman, Tafunkshis, and Topkapı. Shah Abbas's new model army was massively successful and allowed him to reunite parts of Greater Iran and expand his nation's territories at a time of great external pressure and conflict. The Safavid era also saw the mass integration of hundreds of thousands of ethnic Caucasians, notably Circassians, Georgians, Armenians, and other peoples of the Caucasus in Persian society, starting with the era of Shah Tahmasp I, and which would last all the way till the Qajar era. Originally only deployed for being fierce warriors and having beautiful women, this policy was notably significantly expanded under Shah Abbas I, who would use them as a complete new layer in Persian society, most notably to crush the power of the feudal Qizilbash. Under Abbas's own reign, some 200,000 Georgians, tens of thousands of Circassians, and 300,000 Armenians were deported to Iran. Many of them were, as above mentioned, put in the Ghilman Corps, but the larger masses were deployed in the regular armies, the civil administration, royal household, but also as laborers, farmers, and craftsmen. Many notorious Iranian generals and commanders were of Caucasian ancestry. Many of their descendants linger forth in Iran as the Iranian Georgians, Iranian Circassians, and Iranian Armenians, and many millions of Iranians are estimated to have Caucasian ancestry as a following of this. Upon the fall of the Safavid dynasty, Persia entered into a period of uncertainty. The previously highly organized military fragmented and the pieces were left for the following dynasties to collect. Afsharid dynasty. Following the decline of the Safavid state, a brilliant general by the name of Nader Shah took the reins of the country. This period and the centuries following it were characterized by the rise in Russian power to Persia's north. From the time of Peter the Great, the northern states of the Persian Empire were under threat of Russian annexation. In 1710, Tsar Peter formulated his foreign policy principles, the backbone of which was invasion and territorial expansion. The first to suffer from the new Russian power was the Ottoman Empire. However, pressure was soon exerted on the Persian Empire as well. In May 1723, the first major Russo-Persian war occurred and the invasion came as far as the northern city of Rasht. At the Treaty of Babi Ali, the Ottoman and Russian empires divided up large portions of Persia between themselves. It was Nader Shah who, with great force, drove the Ottomans and Russians out of the occupied lands and eventually began expanding the borders of Greater Iran. Following Nader Shah, many of the other leaders of the Afsharid dynasty were weak and the state they had built quickly gave way to the Qajars. As the control of the country decentralized with the collapse of Nader Shah's rule, many of the peripheral territories of the empire gained independence and only paid token homage to the Persian state. Zand dynasty.